from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. It's Mind the Gap, a practical web series for young and future music educators. Tonight on the program, from the music education team at the Yamaha Corporation of America, Assistant Marketing Manager of Education, Dr. Dave Gerhart, Marketing Manager of Education, Heather Mansell, Senior Director of Education, Marcia Neel. Tonight's conversation moderated by Susan Smith and David Starnes. Please welcome Susan Smith and David Starnes.
Good evening, and welcome to the 20th episode of Mind the Gap, a webinar series focused on young and new teachers and those student teachers whose experiences have been and continue to be interrupted by the pandemic. My name is Susan Smith, and I'm an educational consultant for Music for All, a lecturer in music education at Troy University in Troy, Alabama, and chair of the NAFME Collegiate Advisory Council. I've taught at all levels and areas of music education, and I'm especially interested in supporting young teachers as my daughters are in their second and fourth years as music teachers. My colleague and friend, David Starnes, has been co-hosting these webinars with me since June 20th of last year. David, did you ever think we'd be hosting these almost a year later?
It's amazing. I love the word season finale, and we're not even on The Bachelor. This is awesome. So this is a great night for this episode. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about yourself, David.
My name is David Starnes. I'm the current director of orchestras at Kennesaw Mountain High School. Like Susan, I've taught at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels, and at the collegiate level as well. I just formerly was the director of athletic bands at Western Carolina University and moved back to Atlanta a year ago. I chose a year with a pandemic to go back to public school. So in my 32nd year of teaching, this has been quite the education. So if you're a new teacher out there and you're down in the dumps about how this year's gone, talk to any veteran teacher, and we're all in the same boat. So we should be celebrating the fact that you're listening to this tonight and you're still in music education. You made it, and we're going to make it through this just fine. My father was a lifer music educator. He's 83 years old and was in band, orchestra, and chorus and administration. And I feel very, very fortunate to have had the opportunity to spend my career doing this. So I'm really, really excited about tonight, and I'm glad you guys are joining us. Susan?
Awesome. Well, let's get our panelists a chance to introduce themselves, and we'll kind of jump into things. Dave?
Hi, I'm so glad to be here tonight. My name is Dr. Dave Gerhart. I'm the Assistant Marketing Manager for Education. And I come to Yamaha from teaching in the collegiate area for about 17 years. Taught percussion at California State University, Long Beach, and was a Yamaha artist, and came and been with Yamaha for about 6 years now. And Heather and Marcia and I work together as the education team, and it's just so great to be a part of this team and to help educators build stronger programs. And just a little fun fact, I marched Bands of America in 1988 in Whitewater, Wisconsin. So
awesome.
Going way back. Yeah.
Well, you threw kind of the trifecta of education there at Yamaha. We're happy to have you with us. Heather, tell us about yourself.
Hi, it's so great to be here. Thanks for asking us. Well, I've been in the music products industry for, I guess, more than 20 years, and 19 of those with Yamaha, believe it or not. I have a strings background. I'm a string player. I did that for many years at Yamaha, has managed a string product category. And in the last few years, as the education team emerged, I was able to lead this team and kind of bring everything that we have to offer at Yamaha and from the industry. And that's our industry partners like the NAMM Foundation and NAFME and all those great resources that surround the industry and how we can help teachers build their programs with those resources. So I'm thrilled to be here and help talk about this topic tonight.
Fantastic. Well, Marcia, anybody who's ever been around you, they know what a firecracker you are. And I know Yamaha is thrilled to have you on their team. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, I spent 23 years in public education as a choral director, and then an additional 14 years as the music supervisor of the Clark County School District here headquartered in Las Vegas, but we're a very large district, about 8,000 square miles. If you can imagine, that's pretty big. And we have literally 360 some schools. I didn't have to do them all. I only had to do the secondary ones, which was a handful in itself. and led the program to through a really growth period in the 90s and into the 2000s before I retired in 2007. And then at that point, I did some work with the Music Achievement Council, which is a nonprofit that has provided amazing resources for you new teachers, especially. You can just download tons of resources. We're supported by NAM, and there are all kinds of things about recruitment and retention and all kinds of things. But I'll get away from that and let you know that within the last 5-6 years, I've been with Yamaha Corporation as their senior director of education, and it's been a true joy for me to work with Heather and Dave and a couple of the folks in Indianapolis, John, Melanie, the gang. It's just a wonderful group of people, always wanting the very best for teachers and keeping that right in the front, as that's how we make decisions. So it's great to be here. We got lots of information to share. So get your pencils out, have your paper ready, because we're going to be talking about all kinds of moolah that's out there for you.
Absolutely. Well, and for those of you who are with us tonight, please know that this will be on our YouTube channel moving forward. And as well, we're a podcast. So if you know people that were not able to be with us tonight and you think this information is something they might be interested in, please feel free to share that with them. And we're going to have a little bit different format tonight. We're going to go a little bit more in depth with each one of our panelists rather than kind of a round table, because we just thought it was such valuable information and each one of you have so many things to share on the topics. Dave, we're kind of in acronym city, it seems like, with teachers and funding and ESSER and grants and things, and it can get confusing. So we're hoping that you can kind of help unpack this for us a little bit tonight. So some people might be hearing about ESSER and educational relief funding for the first time. So can you kind of share a little bit about that with us and the purpose and kind of where it came from?
Definitely. Yeah, there are too many acronyms. And I mean, even after studying this for the last year, we get mixed up with the different acronyms. The one thing I will say is if there's an acronym you don't know, Google is your best friend. Just type it into Google and you will get the information. So what we're going to talk about tonight primarily is a K through 12 grant that is called ESSER. And ESSER, there are 3 versions of ESSER, and they were part of the 3 COVID relief funds that were allocated. And we're not going to get into all the different ones, but there was one in March, there was one in December, and there was one that just happened. And those 3 funds allocated $189.5 billion. That's BILLION, $1 billion for K through 12 education. Which is just mind blowing. I mean, it's a once in a generation thing. We have never had this amount of money that is going directly to our schools to help them get through the difficulty that we've had with COVID reliefs. So ESSER is what you are going to want to know. If you want to know the name of it, it's the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. So that's what ESSER stands for.
Awesome. And so can you tell us a little bit about maybe what the stipulations are for this relief program and any guidelines about, what it can and can't do? I know there's some confusion about whether it can fund positions or what monies can be used for. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the general overall thing is it supports 3 things: a health and safe return to schools, number 1. Number 2, to address learning loss that happened throughout the last year. And number 3, equity across your school districts. So basically, the way that ESSER was set up was the federal government had these COVID relief funds. The federal government allocated money to the state board of education, or whatever it's called in your state. And the state then took that money and allocated it directly to the districts. So this is all federal money. This is all taxpayer money, so we can see exactly what that fund is. So the first thing you're going to do is you got to start to do your homework. And by doing your homework, you're going to go out and you're going to look and see what was allocated to your school district. So the easiest way to do that, because every state is a little bit different about how they do it, the easiest way to do that is to go to Google, again, your friend Google, and type in the name of your state, State Department of Education, and ESSER. And I would type in ESSER Roman numeral 3. ESSER 1 and 2, which were allocated in 2020, have mostly been spent, especially ESSER 1. The deadlines have passed for that. ESSER 2 is kind of where we are now, but ESSER 3, as part of the American Relief Plan, is the bulk of the money. It's 10 times the amount that we got from ESSER 1. So there's a ton of money. So by doing that, what that will do is it will take you to your state Board of Education website. And generally on that page, there will be a document about how to get the funds, what to look for. There will also a lot of states, and we've been doing this presentation in different states, so I've been doing the research and looking at the different states. Some states will even have a Excel document where you can download and see exactly what was allocated to your district. So you're starting to do your homework. You're learning what ESSER funds are. You're getting the amount, say your district was allocated $50 million, which is not uncommon. So you get that information. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to look at what we call the allowable uses. So ESSER set up 15 allowable uses in the law, and these are 15 different ways that you can spend the money. So the first way, which I love, is basically anything that was allocated under ESSER, which is basically music, because music is part of a well-rounded education. So now this money can be used to support music programs. And then you just start going down. There are some allowable uses to make sure that we disinfect schools. So, the PPE and the instrument covers and the masks, and, I can go into all the details, but we don't have enough time to go into all the different ones. There's one that will relate to getting extra instruments. If you are in a school district that has a middle school program and you've got 3 ensembles, but maybe you only have 1 tuba. Well, in this time and day, we don't want to share instruments. So this money can be used to purchase instruments so that each period now has a tuba or a bari sax, or, if you're a general music teacher, you can have recorders for the school. Buy everyone a recorder and get a recorder in everyone's hands and get them so that they're not sharing these instruments. And I love 15. 15 is basically kind of like the if you were, in a job description and it said, other duties as assigned, I'm going to read 15. Other activities that are necessary to maintain the operation and continuity of services in local education agencies, and that's just government speak for a school district, and continuing to employ existing staff. So that's where the existing staff. So if programs are being cut because there's not enough money, or the districts are saying that there's not enough money, number 15 in the allowable uses in the law, the ESSER law says that this money can be used to pay for staff. But it also, we also talk about learning loss. And 20% of the funds, especially in ESSER 3, need to be used to address learning loss. So learning loss is something that happened, over this school year. Maybe it means that you weren't able to start a beginning band program. So you want to use this money to make sure that you can, over the summer, have a beginning band program so that you can continue to build your band. But it also means bringing in coaches to help teach after school programs or summer band camps or set up private lessons. So that money is there. And there's so much money. So you do your homework. Take your allowable uses, you start to put together your plan, and don't be in a bubble. Get out and talk to other people in your school. Talk to the other arts teachers. Talk to the other people that are in the band programs across the district, and come up with these plans. This is not a money grab. So don't think that you're going to, spend, you're going to get $1 million and you're going to get to buy everything you ever wanted. But you want to try, those 3 things: health and safety return, address learning loss, and equity across the school districts. So those things, you start to put together your plan, and then you go to your administrator. Usually that's your principal. Sometimes it could be your VAPA coordinator, but remember to follow the chain of command. And this is something that's important, not only for funding, but you guys have talked about it last week. I loved the last session you guys did. Follow that chain of command. It's like the military. You don't want to upset your direct supervisor. So you go to your supervisor and you say, do you realize that there's this money out there? You can hand them some documents or email these documents. Here's our plan. So you're not just going to them saying, there's $50 million for my district and I want some of it. What do I get? You're coming to them with a plan. You're saying, here's the money that our district has been allocated. I want to purchase these things so that I can make sure that my students are safe, I have addressing learning loss, and that I have equity across the school district. And then you work with them. I mean, the teachers are not the ones that are going to be requesting the money. The administrators are going to be the one that are addressing the money. And the crazy thing is a lot of people don't even really know that this money is there. They've kind of heard like, oh, there's ESSER, and I'm never really going to get this money. It's so much money that, everyone else is going to get it, but I'm never going to see any of it. But I mean, if your district got, and I'm a drummer, so I'm not going to do math, but if your district got $50 million and you got like 0.001% of it, that would be a lot of money to support your program, right? So,
and Dave, and in Iowa, didn't we just have a teacher come up out of nowhere and tell us about that?
Yeah.
I mean, she said her principal just came in and said, hey, what do you need? We have some extra money. And how much money? She spent a ton of money.
Yeah, I can't remember principal or superintendent. Yeah. And they said, you need more instruments so that the kids will have more instruments. Right. And if you really think it's the large instruments that you really want to try and get, the ones that are being shared, the tubas, the sousaphones, the ones that, another thing that I like is like all those accessory instruments, especially in the back of the room with percussion. If you've got a band, an orchestra, and a wind ensemble, and they're all sharing the same equipment, get some more instruments or get some cleaning supplies so that you make sure that you have that safe and healthy return to school. So that was a lot. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that, and that's how teachers feel right now, because it's like, wait a minute, forever I've felt like I can't ask for anything, and I don't actually have this list. I'm a big list maker. I love making lists, but we don't like keep that secret list maybe of running things we would like to have pie in the sky. So that's great advice to start with that, and just not assume that you can't get it, that it might be a possibility, and that anything is a great thing. I think that idea. I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. We will also put in the chat a link to a folder that has a ton of documents. We work, closely, like Heather said, with the NAM Foundation and NAFME, and our friend Bob Morrison and Marcia, they did a great webinar about a month ago, could be a year ago. I can't remember at this point. I mean, time is so... But Bob Morrison put together this great folder with ESSER resources, and in that folder, all the allowable uses are in there, and they also have documents of articles that people have written, and you can kind of see how you can fit different things into the allowable uses. And then the other thing I want to spotlight in there is Marcia wrote a really great an email that you can send to your administrator to get the conversation started. It's a template that you can take.
I love templates.
Yes, yeah. It's a template that you can take and you can apply it to your needs, and then that will be hopefully the way that you can open the door with your administrators.
Right.
Fantastic. Well, one more quick question for you, Dave. Yeah. What's the timeline to you apply? When is this funding going to happen? And when can teachers kind of look towards that once they apply for it?
So unfortunately, the timeline is kind of all over the place, and it is based on the allocations to each state. So when the ESSER funds, there's ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. When they were allocated to the state, the day that the state got that money is when the clock starts. They have a year to spend the money. So essentially, ESSER 1, you have until September of this year, 2021. ESSER 2, you can spend through September 2022, and ESSER 3, September 2023. But there are stipulations with each state, and it's, instead of saying this is the exact date that you should make sure, the thing I would do is tomorrow, you start putting together your plan, you go to your administrator, you talk to your administrator, and then they will talk to the higher ups and their bosses, and get with the state and find out, what the exact deadlines are for your state, because it does vary per state depending on when and how they got the money. And the crazy thing is, if the money is not spent, it goes back to the feds. So we want to, this is not just for music. I don't want to say, I would love for all this money to be in music programs. I mean, just think how amazing that would be. But this is for every program. This is for all of K through 12 education. We want to be at the table talking to our administrators, getting this money and being a part of that. And, be that squeaky wheel. Ask those questions. Be prepared. Do your homework. Have your plan. Talk to your administrator and see how it can really support your program.
And I think we have to 2024 to spend it all, right? I mean, with all this much money. So you, if you get no now, maybe you could ask again later. I mean, I've heard people say that over and over. Just don't take no as no. No, maybe now, but maybe 6 months could be yes. So, don't ever give up. And the one thing about new teachers and young teachers is that you guys have that thing that you can go in because you really don't know everything. You can just say, well, I heard about this and could you help me, blah, blah. And oh my gosh, your principal's going to love you for doing that.
Or when you're doing that interview, asking the principal who's interviewing you, how much money is your school getting for ESSER? That would be a great question at the end.
Absolutely.
How you're having those questions at the end, because that's really showing that you're doing your homework and you're learning, and you should have that number, have it written down. Oh, I don't know what we're getting for ESSER. Well, I looked it up before I came into the interview, and this district is getting blah, blah, blah. And you having that is really showing that you're really interested in that job. So having that information is great. The other thing I want to say, and I know I'm going a couple minutes over, Title I has nothing to do with ESSER. Nothing. So let's make sure that that's clear. The only reason, so a lot of people are thinking that we have to be a Title I school in order to get the money. That is not true. The only reason Title I is in this at all is for equity reasons. The federal government needed a way to make sure that everyone got this money equitably. So they used the Title I formula to get the money out to everyone. But you do not have to be a Title I school. You have to be a Title I district to get the money. But Title I is not related to ESSER. End of story. Right, Marcia?
Right. You said it right.
All right. Whew.
Well, that was great, Dave. Wow,
Take
what
a glass
great
of water,
information.
buddy.
Yeah, you did your homework. I'll tell you that. And for a drummer, I'm impressed. I mean,
right.
Thank you.
As a fellow percussionist,
I'm a percussionist. Yeah.
I'm very impressed by that. Well, everybody, when you probably saw the title of this episode, "Breaking the Code," now you know why, because this is like a Tom Hanks or a Tom Cruise movie to try to figure out, it is Mission Impossible sometimes, and what we're trying to do. And if, like Marcia said, if you get a no from, ESSER, there are other avenues. And we're going to discuss all those tonight, so you don't feel like you get a no from there. We're also going to talk about grants, because I think grants are a big part of maybe things that, especially if you're a young teacher, maybe you've never written a grant and it's about this, 5 inches of paperwork to do it. But there are some great educational grants out there, and a lot of money, just like Dave said, that goes unused and unassigned in grants. So we're going to turn it over to Heather. And Heather, talk to us a little bit about Title IV, and maybe for those that are in the audience that have never heard of that Title IV grant funding, can you give us a synopsis of what that program looks like?
Yeah, sure. So I know this is a lot of government speak, and titles can be, all those titles can feel very confusing. But one thing to keep in mind when we're talking about the Title IV grant, and anything that's title, is basically something that is year over year. Whereas what Dave was talking about before, that's one-time funding for coronavirus relief. So that's, appropriated by the government, one time only, doesn't exist year over year, just for the specific situation and this place and time that we're in with COVID. But Title IV and other types of title funding is part of ESSA, which the Every Student Succeeds Act, which actually superseded ESEA, which was the education law from 1964 that kind of established what are the teachable subjects. And ESSA was signed into law in 2015 by President Obama and that administration. And it's Title IV is a block grant that addresses 3 broad categories as a part of ESSA. So those 3 categories are a well-rounded education. And the reason why we're really focused on that is because a well-rounded education in the law includes specifically music. So anything that falls into well-rounded education can be used for music program purposes. So that's really important to know. So well-rounded education includes music, art, health education, physical education, career and technical education, and more. The other big category as a part of Title IV-A is part of safe and healthy schools. So that's anything that has to do with mental health services, violence prevention, the safety initiatives, and more. And the third broad category of Title IV is technology. So the intent here is for school districts to provide instructional support, professional development, learning, digital devices, and to keep investing in technology. And I mean, who could guess that this year that technology would just be, front and center. So 2015, it was already set aside as, let's raise our game in technology. But here we are in 2021 saying, oh my gosh, technology is basically the main delivery method for almost all types of education. So those are the three broad categories that are a part of a Title IV-A fund. So similar to what Dave said about Title IV-A, this is something that at the district level that you apply for. So for most states, there's a Title IV-A coordinator, and that person might be the same person as who is dealing with the COVID funds, maybe not. So you definitely want to reach out and find that out. I did a little homework before this and Googled Indiana Title IV, and they have a really, really good website for the state of Indiana. And every state has a site because, as Dave mentioned, all of this funding is public funding. So it has to be transparent in how the process is and how money is being spent and how the money is appropriated. So again, how does this really work? So Title IV-A funding kind of falls into two spending categories. So if you're in a small district and you're looking for anything under $30,000, you don't need to do a needs assessment, and you can spend money in any of those three categories that I mentioned. So you can spend it on a well-rounded education, which is like music. It can be spent on technology, and it can also be spent on safe and healthy schools. So above $30,000, which is a lot of schools, you do need to do a needs assessment. So this is where kind of meeting with your other teachers is something you want to do. And, kind of this extra layer this year now that you're probably going to be meeting with your teachers anyway about coronavirus relief. So it does feel like, let's talk about more things, but like what David said, these are funding opportunities, and this one is something that happens year over year. So even if you're not going to apply for Title IV-A funds this year or haven't applied for them in the past, you can be maybe leading the charge for a team or joining a group within your group of teachers that's working on Title IV-A funding requests. So above $30,000, there's some funding requirements, and we'll share some details of what that looks like. But the main examples of it, and this is kind of the meat of it. So Title IV-A funding generally goes to things like in-service clinics and workshops to support music. Obviously, it can be for musical instruments, strings, band, percussion, keyboards, anything that supports your music instruction. Adding or expanding music courses. So, if you're with your teachers and you determine that you want, as part of your well-rounded program, to include guitar, piano, modern band, mariachi, anything that serves the needs of students in your community, that can be funded under Title IV-A. Supplies and textbooks, sheet music stands, accessories, all the technology programs, music notation, audio editing, audio listening equipment, and it can also include facilities upgrades. So again, we're talking about something that is year over year. So once the coronavirus relief funding is done, or it's maybe being spent on other things, this is another bucket of money that administrators need to consider for year over year things that can go to your music program, and you just have to be the squeaky wheel that draws that connection for the administration. So
Heather, a couple of real quick questions. As
I'm throwing
you're
a lot
touching
out
on
there,
that,
just
Heather.
like
No, it's fantastic. But I'm sitting here thinking, if I'm a new teacher and I'm hearing, I'm looking at those three categories, and I have some ideas about what I might need. Do most websites have a detailed description as far as, okay, I need this, and so that would fall under this category? Or is there a person they can go to, like this Title IV coordinator, that could get a little daunting, I would think, and just how you can apply that and if Title IV fits their particular need.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to have your plan ready before you go to anybody outside your building, of course. And you want to have that, like Dave was saying, you definitely want to respect the chain of command here. I'm sure the VAPA coordinator or the Title IV coordinator does not want to hear from every single music teacher in the district asking questions. So it's probably best to meet with the person at your school who would normally communicate with that person. There's some really great resources we've shared. I think Marcia put them in the chat or Dave put them in the chat here. That's kind of your starting points, because we have checklists. You know, we've done the homework so that you don't have to. We've put together all those checklists that that help you align what you might be thinking about with these allowable uses and how it meets the Title IV requirements. The NAFME website has a huge toolkit. Actually, even the Indiana Department of Education has a toolkit as well. So you can go down to the state level and kind of see what they're saying. And I noticed that they had some very nice infographics just for the state of Indiana. But every state has something similar. And those would be good to look at before you start emailing the Title IV coordinator at your state level, just so you have a clarity on what you can ask for and what you could ask for year over year versus just this one-time funding, which is coronavirus funding.
And, you know, with summer coming up, if you know, a student or a student teacher or a first-year teacher or a young teacher has never written that grant, there's a lot of online things. I've worked with several 501c3s about how to write a good grant and how to make your case, because I think a lot of that is in the verbiage sometimes. People that review that know what they're looking for in terms of that. So I would recommend that maybe over the summer. But what's a typical time frame that they would apply and then maybe hear back? Is that fiscally or is that quarterly, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I also did a little homework just for the state of Indiana, and I think every state is going to be slightly different in this, but generally speaking, the timeline for getting a pre-approval to apply for Title IV is roughly in July. So that's something to keep in mind, just to get your, now is a really good time to start talking to the other teachers. June is coming up, end of the school year. What's our plan for this funding category? That maybe this year is special because we're going to use coronavirus relief for all this stuff over here, but maybe there's a bucket over here that could be that you can work with your administration to say, hey, let's use Title IV for this specific project or for this specific area of the music program. It qualifies under this. Let's do it. And that's how you want to do your homework and be ready with a plan in that area. And I'll say one thing about this type of grant. This is a non-competitive grant. So the money has already been appropriated to the states. So you're not competing with New York, you're not competing with Ohio, you're not competing with Florida. The money is already appropriated to each state in advance, and then they will award those according to the asks and how detailed they are and how well they fit those requirements.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Heather. That's fantastic information. Susan?
Great. Well, Marcia, we're going to jump over to you now and talk a little bit about Title II grant and career technical education funding. And again, we're talking about a bunch of different things tonight, but I think we all want to just get as much info to teachers as possible. It's been a while since maybe they've had their classroom classes. And also, I don't know in music ed that we spend a lot of time on this. I even tell my own students, I want to teach you to write, and then we'll start learning how to write grants. We'll do that first. And I can't teach you how to do everything. But can you give us a little bit of info on all this?
You bet. I think, it's funny as I sit and listen to everything that everybody said. The one thing I'll just start off with this, and that is that if you have a really great, and this is all on its own separately, if you have a really great working relationship with your supervisor, that is really step one, because your supervisor will go to bat for you. But you have to have a really good working relationship. It can't be, I want this and I should have, it should be, I want to provide for our kids this kind of XYZ experience. And is there something that we can do to help with having a safer return to school so that the kids don't have to share instruments. I'm concerned about this, that, and the other thing, and approaching it always from what's best for kids. And I always used to tell that to our teachers here, is that if you always address what's really best for kids, that's really hard to argue with, right? And you are the expert. I mean, unless he's been a music educator or she, they don't necessarily know all that stuff. And often we just assume that administrators know all this stuff. Well, they don't. So, by you watching this tonight, what you're going to be able to walk away with is just general information that there is funding out there that the Fed is putting into education as a result of COVID, to help with relieve all of the problems that we've had. So that's kind of like the big nugget here. And then in addition, there are other streams that through all these titles that Heather has been talking about, Title IV, and I'm going to mention Title II. There are other things that happen that are available annually. So if you could just keep your supervisor in the loop about, this is what I'm working toward and this is what I'd like to see, and maybe we could have a conversation about the best way to move forward. That is the key, okay? Then when you go to talk with them, there's no big surprise, But I'm going to talk about Title II now. And so Title II, of course, is part of all of this funding for education. But it is very specifically for professional development. And what does that mean? Making yourself better at what you do. And so anytime that you have a question about any of these titles, the best thing to do would be to put in Title II and then your state. So I just put in Title II to see what came up first. And I found the most wonderful resource from the state of Washington. And they actually have, as we've been talking about, acceptable uses right on their website, how the money can be used. In general, I'm just going to read this right from their website. In general, Title II funds can be used to provide supplemental activities that strengthen the quality and effectiveness of teachers, principals, and other school leaders. The purpose is to increase student achievement consistent with state standards, improve the quality and effectiveness of teachers, principals, and other school leaders, increase the numbers of teachers, principals, and other school leaders who are effective in improving student academic achievement. See where I'm going with all this, right? Provide low income, and this is in everything, low income and minority students greater access. So it's just really important to think achievement. What could I be doing? Well, every summer, except for these last 2 summers, actually, I've been offering a mariachi workshop here in Clark County because we have this huge program, and so people have been coming here to train. And so many of the teachers who come because their district provided them Title II money. And so they come and the district takes care of their expenses. They fly them in. You get a week in Las Vegas. You get to learn a whole bunch of new stuff, and you go back to serve. Who are you serving? Minority students a lot of the time, and kids who have other kinds of needs. So this is a way for you to break out into other areas, try something new and different, go to a workshop, talk to your principal. We want to serve more kids. How can I do that? Maybe you have a workshop where you want to learn about world music drumming, or you want to teach steel pan, whatever that is. Just look for that thing that draws you, and then be sure to keep that, keep in line with your principal and speak with them or her or him often about what you're looking to do and how you want to have an impact on the students. That's just the biggest key going. Okay, so again, it says Title II Part A funds can be used to support teachers, principals, other school leaders, paraprofessionals, and paraeducators. So in that state, you can do that. So look up your state, put Title II in there. And so I'm going to step away from that because that pretty much takes care of that, Title II. Now, I love this, my favorite topic, CTE. CTE stands for Career and Tech Ed, CTE, okay? Every state in the whole United States has a CTE office or some sort of CTE group that deals with this. And the reason that they do this is because there's been so much money put into CTE through the Carl Perkins grant, which I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. But let's just talk about CTE. So what about music and CTE? How do those things relate? Okay, So let's suppose you want to try a new program and develop something. For example, music business is like my latest and greatest thing that I'm on now. Because think about this, career in tech ed means that kids will graduate from high school and go to work. Now, what a concept. You know, not everybody goes to college, right? Not everybody's a music educator. Not everybody is going to go and be the first year trumpet player for the Chicago Symphony or go to Juilliard, right? So, wouldn't it be great if you knew that you could leave high school and walk out into a job, you know, because you've taken a curriculum, a specific curriculum while you were in high school to have this job. And then you become a taxpayer and contribute to all of us right off the bat. So, you know, it's great. You're not flipping burgers at McDonald's. It could be a lot worse, right? So, this is the kind of program we're looking to really expand, and Yamaha is really owning this right now because we believe that there are just so many jobs out there that you can have in music that aren't necessarily teaching or performing. Okay, for example, look at all the people who work over there at Music for All. Okay, MFA, they're all in music business. Look at Dave, look at Heather, music business. I mean, there are so many more jobs in music business. You could work for a record company. You could work for a performance venue and still have music, you know, in as your passion and still involved in music. And you don't even have to be a music maker. There are a lot of people who love music walking around the hallways in your schools, and we all know this. I think a lot of times people say it's like 80% of the kids aren't in music, but they love music. We know high school kids love music. So what has to happen with CTE? Well, you have to develop a curriculum. Well, first of all, you go to your state because every state's CTE requirements are different. In California, we have a whole CTE program for the arts. There's media arts and performing arts and all kinds of things. So your state will have some kind of directive document that will help you with that. Well, what you have to do then is you have to find a way to offer a curriculum that will be CTE approved. It can't be one class. It's got to be like, you know, a two-year or 3-year kind of investment in coursework. And for music business, that might be, for example, communications, or how to write a 3-year plan, or how to write a budget, or how to put on a program, and, you know, all those things. Well, these are all things that we all learned to do eventually as music educators. So we're almost in the music business ourselves. Now, you could combine perhaps with your business department and maybe do something together to write a CTE course in music. I mean, this is a wonderful opportunity for music educators to really expand the kids that they're servicing and really help, because they're going to walk right out of school and get a job right away. And so please look into this. This is something. Now, Carl Perkins Grant. So every state in the country gets big time funding through this Carl Perkins. It's a federal grant, and it just exists in every state. So what happens is you would apply through your state to get funding to either start a program, or, well, probably not start it, but at least to have a program, approved at your state level. Once approved, then you might be able to get some Carl Perkins money. So I'm going to tell you just a story that one of my mariachi attendees told me, is that, you know, she started her mariachi program through Carl Perkins money, because in her school district, they identified mariachi as a program where if kids learn to do that, they literally can go out and make a living being a mariachi, because they have the skills to go out and be performers on their own. It reminded me of like back in the 60s when, you know, garage bands were being formed, and all these, and the Beatles and the Stones were coming out, and, you know, there were garage bands everywhere, and kids were going to make money on their own learning to play these instruments. All right. Well, now it's the same thing is happening with mariachi, because they're smaller ensembles and they can exist without us. You know, it's not a concert band. We don't have to take them all out, right? The kids go out and do it on their own. They're making money on their own. They're playing in quinceañeras, and they're playing at restaurants and parties and all kinds of things, and making money on their own. And actually, one of our teachers started a group here in Clark County with students from the district, and now they're all like in their 20s, 25, 26, and making a really good living at doing that. And now they're doing mariachi workshops all over the country. I mean, it's just, you've got to just think a little bit about, what can I do? Well, we're going to actually offer a summer program at the University of Texas, San Antonio. And hopefully somebody can put some info in the chat about this, where teachers, and it's going to be totally virtual, teachers who might be interested in what is this really all about, and man, this sounds cool, can get some information. And it'll be taught by two teachers. One is a high school teacher in San Antonio who started a 2-year program in music business, and then it was somewhat adopted by UTSA because he has a music marketing business, I think a BA program at UTSA. So now the kids can go right from high school to college and even get a degree if they want. So it's just the most wonderful opportunity for kids who love music to discover something else that they can do besides be a teacher or, play in a symphony or something like that. So it's really the latest and greatest, and it's funded, and there's everything wonderful about it.
Yeah,
So
I think we all want our students to be, if they're not going to all be educators, to be consumers, to be those people on the school board who are going to make decisions about funding. And my husband likes to say, everything in a music classroom is music business except for the teacher. Everything in there, so there's opportunities for us to have those positions and things. And it's been great through this whole Title II grant. Many of our teachers from Alabama, where I am, were able to go to Midwest the last time we were in person because they were able to get some funding for that. So I think it's something that can be very tangible for those teachers. It's not just something kind of off pie in the sky. It could be, let's go to this conference next semester or next year, whenever we're live and in person. David, do you have some questions for everybody to kind of how we're going to get this all happening?
Can I?
Yeah, I think maybe. Sure, go ahead. Sorry, Marcia.
Is that on here? It was like, as a music supervisor, how did I use grants? Okay, I didn't. So I'm going to just tell you this right off the bat. If any of you ever want to be a music supervisor one day, I didn't do it because it was my job to ensure that our school district provided funds for a full music program. I don't think our teachers should be depending on writing grants to teach a program in the schools. Programs need to be fully funded. So always remember that. And if they wanted to start something new and different or off the wall or whatever, maybe they could go out on their own and find funding. But I never did that because I always believed that it was the responsibility of the schools district to fund music programs fully. So I just wanted to get that out there.
That's a great point. That's a really good point. I started when I was teaching at Pope High School. I started a steel drum band, and I went to the Coca-Cola Foundation. They're right here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I said, hey, this is what I want to do. And they gave us $30,000 in a grant. The only caveat to it was we had to play at a lot of Coca-Cola functions. And if you've ever moved steel drums, that's not moving a piccolo. So, but it was a great thing, and it still exists at the school. So I think it's a great thing. I agree with what you're saying. One of the things that I think it would be a great way to kind of wrap this around, now that we've talked about, ESSER funding, we've talked about ESSA, we've talked about Title IV and Title II. Now you're that educator that is running to the principal or to the coordinator in your district or your music supervisor, whoever that might be, to try to gain some of these funds. And we want to talk about the professionalism side of this. So it doesn't come across as, your eagerness can't be interpreted by an administrator as egotistical or on the front edge of, you've turned me off because of your approach. So I really like what Dave said early on about developing an action plan among your colleagues. And when I was first starting to teach, I was in a school district where there was a lot of young teachers all at once, and they called us the brat pack. We were out, and we were always the ones that were trying to do more than everybody else was. And where that's great, it was also interpreted by the veteran teachers as, it's like a mosquito on you, just go away. I mean, I've had enough of that. So Dave, what about some action plans that you've heard of nationally about where teachers come together and how they create almost a cohort to be able to get their mission across, and maybe to learn from one another and divide and conquer?
I haven't really heard about any nationally, and maybe Marcia or Heather can chime in as well. But, I think definitely I would start with your school and your district. And there are like-minded people on the internet, and, while some people don't really like to use Facebook and some of the other social media, I mean, I think there are a lot of really great groups, especially support groups on Facebook, to help new teachers, to help, put together these plans and ask these questions. Could you put together a group of people, of like-minded individuals that want to apply for these programs and start talking across? That would be one strategy I would use. I don't know if Marcia or Heather, you have a suggestion for.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about this type of funding, everything happens at the local level. So, you can definitely have national level colleagues and groups, but everything's going to happen where you live and affect your school and in your district. So that's really where you want to spend your focus and coming together with teachers and the other arts educators in your area. I know that NAFNE is pulling together success stories. So if that's something that's needed, we'd be happy to share that. I think we can put a link to some of those in the chat. And I know that they're actually looking for success stories too, and that you could be a part of that. They're trying to collect, particularly for the coronavirus relief, like what has worked for you? Can you share your story? We'd like to try and track this because, as Dave mentioned, as we've mentioned, coronavirus relief is not just for music programs, it's for all education. And so it's hard to track the data just specifically for music. So that could be another thing that you can be a part of in trying to share what has worked for you and read what has worked for other people. That definitely helps bring you together with others and sharing stories, because that's all we're doing here today is sharing stories about what's working.
And I would say also, I once sat on the board for United Sound, and when their founder Julie Duty and I were going through this process, and I remember that just an unbelievable amount of paperwork that she did as far as applying for grants. Don't reinvent the wheel, I would say, because we actually reached out to people that were successful in grant writing or successful in application for Title IV and Title II, and go to those people and say, what did you do? Just reach out to those people. And I would say 501c3s are a great place to start for that. Educational 501c3s.
Great point.
Hey, Marcia, a question that I had real quick, or maybe you could expand on just a little bit, this idea of learning loss that Dave kind of alluded to earlier. And we really want teachers to use that kind of terminology rather than remediation, which is something that has a negativity about people coming out of our classrooms. Could you talk about that just a little bit for us?
Oh, absolutely. Again, it's that concept that students missed so much, and we really did miss a lot of kids coming in, right, because we were all gone. And so what we really are seeing, and I'm seeing in my district, and every district I believe is coming up with some sort of plan, because 20% of the money that was given for the ARP, the third of the ESSERs, all right, has to go for learning loss. In Clark County, for example, every single school, all 365, are offering a summer program, and for the whole month of June, that's when all the enrichment programs are happening. So the teachers are now coming up with the coolest things. They've gone to Home Depot, they're going to do bucket drumming, or they're going to do something else. They're not doing necessarily band camp, although you could, but they're having fun with music, because what we're trying to do is get the kids energized about coming back to school, period. So let's have some fun. If I were still teaching, I've already told people I'd put on a musical. This would be for the whole month, I'd have a show going. And at the end, I'd bring a bunch of elementary kids in to see the show. I would just do fun with music. As other districts, I work with a district in Ohio. They're putting on a 2-week percussion camp, and the first week they're focusing on drumline stuff for fun, and the second week they're going to do steel pan. So I was so excited to hear, Dave, that you were into steel band. That's great. But they're going to steel band, get that thing rocking and rolling, and just so the kids can enjoy themselves in the summer. So, we just need to take advantage of the opportunities being presented. And in fact, the person from Dayton reached out to me today and said, we're looking to get all brand new piano labs for every single school. Could you help me out with that? And I said, absolutely. I'm your gal. So,
It's my arm, right? Yeah.
Right. This is the thing. It's a matter of just ensuring that people know that you're aware of all of this and that you also have needs, So,
exactly. That's a great point. And I would also say too, it's one of those things, if you don't succeed, try again.
Absolutely.
It's not going to happen the very first time. If it does, fantastic. But I can't tell you the number of people that I know that have reapplied and reapplied and reapplied. And on that special time, for whatever reason, the request comes through. So in a society where we are, instant gratification with our phones and our computers and everything's got to have an electronic answer, this one probably is not going to be that way, but be persistent. Be persistent.
So, and one thing I just want to clarify also is that the money that Dave talked about, okay, all of that money is just one time. All right. Now, when we say apply, I mean, all the rest of the money, like all the title money Heather talked about and what I talked about is annual. So start hitting that ESSER money first. I'm sorry, Dave, I didn't mean to jump on you there.
No. I was going to say also use this summer opportunity to reach out to students that are not in your program right now.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got ESSER money that's going to support you teaching over the summer, you've also got ESSER money that's going to support you with the technology. So how great would it be to teach, kids how to write beats or write film score or movie music or music for video games, and kids that are not in your program now, and they can see how great you are as a teacher and an educator, and maybe, join the band or join the orchestra or join the choir later on, or one of these other, or continue this and continue a modern band program or a laptop ensemble, or, just thinking out, but reaching out to those other kids that you may not reach in your normal everyday program.
Right.
And I was just going to add real quick, is just persistence and positivity. I mean, the persistence thing sometimes can be seen as, you're a nag, but persistence plus positivity. And I've walked out of principals' offices before, the smile on my face. I said, "You haven't seen me for the last time," and you got the smile on your face. It's a different vibe than, no one's listening to me and the door slams. So you just got to be careful about that. And make sure they remember a good experience the last time they saw you talking about this kind of stuff.
And one other thing about that, Bob Morrison said in one of his webinars, maybe yours, I don't know. No principal in the world just hates music and just is not against you and trying to cut your. Nobody's doing anything intentionally. They love to have music in the schools. They get it. They know that it brings kids in every single day, and they know on count day the music kids are all there. I mean, you need to remember you have so much to offer. So don't be afraid to help your principal. Guide him in the process. You have to educate your principal as much as the kids. So
and when we're talking about business acumen, it applies everywhere. It's like, make your boss look good and make it easy for them.
Right.
My favorite quote is
works.
Leif Cook would always say, that you have to be an unapologetic advocate, and that's their job. It's your job as a music teacher, and that any principal would want you to be that. That's your job is to do that and stay positive in that way. One of my big things lately has just been trying to find new points of entry. Let's not always cry about the kids that we've lost. We want to have them back in, keep that door open, find new ways for everyone to be. If you had a heartbeat and you walked into my band room, I'd hand you a triangle. I want everybody to right percussionist. That's where you start. But seriously, trying to find more places and more ways for people to be in your program.
And remember, always follow up whether that meeting is successful or whether it's that grant that you finally got. Follow up in writing with a thank you. Don't just leave it open-ended, because that makes people look like you really probably didn't appreciate it as much as you seem like you might. But something in writing, and if you have booster clubs, get them to write a letter as well. So anything you can do to create that network between yourself, parents, and community would go a long way.
You can always end a meeting with, "So can I get back to you next Friday?" Smile on your face. Who's going to say no to that?
I'll be back, is what you say. Mr. Schwarzenegger. Yeah, for sure. Susan, do you have anything else to add to the code as far as just breaking this up for teachers?
I think just in general to not be afraid and to ask. We have so many resources right now online that you can and Dave has put so many things. Everybody's put so many things in the chat for teachers to be able to access, and just to spend a little bit of time to find it and arm yourself with the information, and then arm your educators above you, your administrators, because they want to ask for those funds as well. So if they see you as their advocate, like you're their information gatherer, and you're going to get them the ways to make this happen, then it's more likely to happen rather than complaining about that it's not happening. So I think, yeah, just staying focused on that and staying positive, David, as you were saying.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've hit our 8:30 mark, and I'm going to go ahead and first of all say thank you to our incredible guests from Yamaha, Dave Gerhart, Heather Mansell, and Marcia, Neel. You guys have just been a wealth of information, and from the moment that we talked about this particular episode, Susan and I, when I knew that you guys were doing stuff, and the really close connection that you have with Music for All as a national presenting sponsor, it is so special to have you on this one tonight, because it's really it takes a village, and I know Music for All would say that Yamaha is a huge part of that village. And the constituents and the students and the teachers that make up Music for All, we couldn't do it without Yamaha. There's just no way possible, and they've been such a long-standing sponsor. Now we have the Yamaha Educator Suite at yamahaeducatorsuite.com. There's just so many resources for teachers. Along with that, Music for All's mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through Music for All. Our vision is to be a catalyst to ensure that every child across America has access and opportunity to participate in active music making in his or her scholastic environment. This is all we're talking about tonight, is how to make those resources possible for children. And before we say goodnight, it is important to understand now more than ever that in these uncertain times through this pandemic, to continue to support Music for All. And we're extremely grateful for any donations or gifts to our nonprofit organization. And I'll emphasize that because tax day just passed. But if you're looking for a write-off, a nonprofit for Music for All, I can't imagine spending your money any better than that. And if you enjoyed tonight's program, and in order for us to continue to provide these free educational resources and advocacy materials, please consider gifting a gift to Music for All at any amount, whatever you can possibly do. It'll allow us to continue this incredible programming. And on a night where we're celebrating a year worth of Mind the Gap, you have helped make that happen. And finally, please join us for a special summer session. We are beginning, we have 2 summer sessions to advertise. The first one we'll talk about tonight is going to happen on Tuesday, June 22nd at 7:30 Eastern Time. And again, we have our great friends at Yamaha to thank for this. Yamaha will sponsor a very informative tutorial on the brand new Harmony Director 300. Now, a lot of you probably have the HD 200. I've seen video of the HD 300, and they are absolutely life-changing, to coin a phrase for Music for All. It will be so much more user-friendly and intuitive in terms of what you can do with that in your program. The session will be led by 2 of the finest people in the country as music educators, Mr. Michael Pote, who's the director of bands at Carmel High School, and his assistant, Mr. Kyle Young. They both use this and actually have created journals as well as video series that Yamaha will be releasing with their interactive look at this amazing new teaching tool. So please don't miss that one. If you're looking at getting a new HD 300, you want to see this first, because this will definitely whet your appetite, and then go back and apply for one of these grants or some sort of funding, and it's got technology written all over it. I mean, you're going to get an HD 300 out of this. So, but until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We are so thrilled that you've been with us. And for Music for All, I just want to say thank you for being here. Susan?
Yeah, thanks everybody. It's been a great ride so far, and apparently we're not done. And as I said, check us out on podcasts. You can ride down the road and listen to me and David banter back and forth about music education stuff. But thanks for being with us. We've enjoyed it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Good night, everyone.
Thank you all. Good night.
Take care.
We certainly appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Have
Bye-bye.
a great, great summer. Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.